Thinking of investing, working, or starting a business in the cannabis industry? We've got you covered right here on Plant Problems. Hosted by Tony Frischknecht, Plant Problems takes a different approach to cannabis than what you're seeing and hearing from the mainstream media. Come along with Tony and be in the know about how to invest, work, or start a cannabis business. Let's get the show started with your host, Tony Frischknecht.
Hello, everybody. This is Tony Frischknecht, and welcome to Plant Problems. Thanks, everybody, for joining me today. I'm excited this next subject I've been asked about hundreds of times, and it's something that I think very few people discuss because I am getting the question still to this day after 10 years. Well, I want to work in the industry, so how do I do that? Most jobs are very simple. You go to the company and you say, can I get an application? It's not that hard either. It's going to take a little bit of work on your side, but it's not difficult. So today, I want to share the best kept secret, and I think something that's going to save you a lot of time and also determine very quickly if you want to be an employee in the cannabis industry. So here we go. Let's get started. And we'll get started by saying, where do you start? One of the number one things you have to do is understand what your state requires for you to work in the industry. So, for example, in the state of Colorado, we have the state-run organization called the Medical Marijuana Enforcement Division, or MED, Marijuana Enforcement Division. That's where all our applications are for the licensing, the employment, occupational. There's usually a handful of different licenses that you can get. And each one, say you're getting employed, you got to have a certain application. Say if you want to work in the maintenance facilities of the industry, you have an occupational. So there's a handful of them. So you need to check this stuff out. So spend a half hour going through and finding this information online. And I'm sure in your area available, if you can't find it online, you can probably talk to an attorney that can give you some information and direction. But that's the first thing you want to do. Don't get too caught up in the details. Just make sure, okay, this is my application, whether it's 2, 3, 4, 10 pages long. You have it and you just review it. But don't waste time filling it out and everything, because there's a few new things you need to do before that. Next, you need to understand your tax situation. And what I mean by that is understand, do you owe taxes? Do you owe back taxes? These are all going to affect you when you go to apply for your application. Don't be scared about that. I actually had some tax issues when we were going through the licensing process, because as a licensing holding owner, you have to go through a pretty rigorous background check. And I had an issue where I was paying back taxes, and I thought, oh my gosh, now I'm not going to be able to get my license. What am I going to do? Well, fortunately, since I had created a payment plan, which some of you may or may not be familiar with, the IRS will allow you to make payments on back taxes. As long as you have a plan in place with them, they are not going to disqualify you from becoming employed or becoming a license holder. So I had some very bad anxiety from that for a while, but just understand that as long as you have something in place where you're either scheduled to pay your taxes or you're paying your back taxes, they will allow you to apply. So big thing, because you could go through and fill out all this paperwork and everything else, turn it in, and all of a sudden, because they're going to figure out whether you owe back taxes. They want to make sure everybody that's in this industry is paying their state and federal taxes, or you're not going to be allowed in it. So you need to know that. The next step, which I think is the big secret to all this, which will save you a ton of time, is running your own background check. Guys, they're going to charge you a fee to get an employment license in the industry. Background checks are like probably between $10 and $20. They're not expensive. But you want to know what's on there. For one, for the unfortunate people that may have something messed up in their background check, it may be wrong. You want to figure this out sooner than later. You don't want to go in there and turn in your application. We had people here in Colorado that were turning their applications in, and they had warrants. And what they would do is they would show up to the office with a warrant and get arrested. I don't want any of you guys getting arrested out there. It's a horrible way to go about it. Everybody makes mistakes, okay? But if you got a problem, you just want to make sure you can handle it so you're not just arrested on a whim. That's a really bad day for you. Nobody wants that. So make sure you understand what's in your background check before you spend all the time and money to put this together just to work in the industry. So that by far right there, guys, is best kept secret. I haven't heard anybody talk about that. So please, if you're going to do that, take my advice on this. Next step, you're going to have to apply because you're going to find out all that information in your background, and they're going to run one on it. So they're going to figure it out, and you might as well be on top of it. Make sure you get all your T's crossed and your I's dotted before you walk in there and you turn in an application for an application that's not going to be approved anyway because you don't meet the requirements. That, and there's states that will say you can apply, but there's no guarantee we'll give you a license, and if you don't get a license, we're not giving you your money back. So you don't want to waste that money too. That's hard too. You're like, oh man, I just wasted $100 and I spent 2 weeks putting this together. Nobody wants that to happen either. So once you have that in place, you fill out your application, everything in your background's good. And for those out there that do find stuff in their background, you need to be really aware that if you have any kind of drug-related felonies, it may be impossible for you to get a license. Again, make sure you read the application, understand, and know what they're going to allow. Okay, so you got that. Now, some of the good news is if you have a marijuana, say misdemeanor, or even a felony, I know some states out there are starting to allow it, depending on how far it goes back, 5, 10 years. That might not disqualify you. So again, make sure you understand what's allowed. If you can figure this out first, again, you won't waste the time filling out the application. You can actually reach out to your enforcement division of that state if they have one established, and you can probably get some answers there to clarify that. There were so many people that applied for these working in the industry or licenses in Colorado that when Colorado first legalized it in the state, they didn't allow it. And then all of a sudden the laws were changed, and then they did allow it up to 5 years. If it didn't go past 5 years, then it would still allow you to apply. So again, you want to know these things before you waste your time. So you've got those things in place. You understand where your background is. Now it goes to apply. Well, like I said, varies in pages. I would imagine employment maybe 3 to 5 pages. And if you struggle filling that out, depending on where you see yourself employed in the industry, there's going to be paperwork throughout your time in cannabis. So if you completely hate paperwork and you don't want to do that, know this up front. You're going to be filling out papers a few times a year, no matter what. So come to a realization with that with yourself, like, yeah, this is part of what I'm doing. The next step, where do you want to work? Do you want to be a grower? Do you want to manage a retail outlet? Do you want to manage a grow facility? Do you want to be a bud tender? Those are some of the main ones. There's also plant tracking. Do you like data? There's a lot of openings in that field, right? Especially right now. So that's good for a tech type person. But really sit down and weigh your options. I've had many talks about this, but what fits your personality? You don't want to go into this thing thinking, well, I'll just take it's marijuana. This is cool stuff. I just want to be involved. It won't drive that kind of passion for it will not last very long, unfortunately. If you have an idea where you want to go, and I say this in a lot of my podcasts, especially to the entrepreneurs, it's much better for you to focus on that. So figure out what you want to do or what your niche is, because just because it's marijuana and it's legalized, it doesn't mean you're going to make a ton of money. Now, there are positions, especially, the tracking side and the compliance side, that do command a higher salary, but they do command a higher commitment from yourself too. So what is it you want to do? And you go into, and let's make, say, example for if you wanted to work at a bar. Well, I'm just going to be a bartender or a bud tender, right? You're dealing with a customer. The transaction's pretty quick, but depending on the company that you're going to work for and their emphasis on education, that might require you to do some studying a lot deeper than you thought of, aside from just getting high. Well, that's going to determine the company you want to work with. So knowing these factors and where you are is going to help you find a better job. So spend some time. I would, once you get through this, spend a significant amount of time on where you see yourself fitting into as an employee in the industry. So figure that out. Next would be finding that company that fits your position. In the more mature states, you're going to see bigger companies that are established, that take care of their employees. I'm publishing a podcast here soon talking about sustainability, and they're talking about these companies that are creating environments for their employees that are better, right? They're, giving them health care, they're paying them better, they're doing all these things that are a little bit better than the next guy. I mean, if you really see yourself as long-term in this industry, you're going to want to work with a good company. And these smaller companies aren't going to have these benefits in place unless they've been around for a while. Because being a small company, you're busy trying to get through the day-to-day. And I was one, so that's not a bad thing. It's just that's a part of business as a small company. Your larger companies are going to have benefits in place, but they're also going to be more corporate. So they're going to be a little more tight on how you can help the company or how you can manage stuff on your own. Smaller mom and pops, you're going to be able to have more flexibility, but your growth potential may not be as high as it would be in a, let's say, corporate structure or larger company. So think about those as you're going to apply for positions. And I would not go and apply for any positions until you get that license, the employment license. There are so many people that wasted my time when I was in the store or working in the grow that would come up and ask for an application of some sorts, and they didn't have a license. It's a waste of my time, because half the time these people would never apply for it, never go through with it, and they ask me a bunch of questions. So don't waste the owner's time or the manager's time. They're extremely busy. Well, now you've got that license in hand and you know what you're going to do. So it's going to be very easy to go in and say, yeah, Mr. So-and-so, because they're going to ask you on most applications, and do you have a license number? Have you worked in the industry? And it doesn't matter if you've been there a long time or short time. As long as you have that employment license from the state or the city, however they're running it in your city, they might have 2 licenses. You'll have to figure that out again. I don't have the answers to all that. This is a great blueprint for you to find what you want to do. And these steps here will answer the majority of your questions as you're going through the application process. So I would use this step by step. I mean, I've used it personally before on the licensing end, which is much more stringent, but this also tells people when you go to apply for a position, you're serious about it. As owners, we get a lot of people that aren't that serious. If you come to me and you got all this stuff in place, I'm like, oh, this guy knows what he's talking about. Or this might be an employee I might want to have on my side. If you're able to spend some time and do this, I guarantee you're going to make more money, you're going to catch the attention of more owners, and you're going to make it further than you ever would have. And I look at this as very simple steps. So, guys, thanks for listening to me today. I would also like to ask if you guys have any questions out there on this podcast or another one, please leave your questions or comments at plantproblem.com. That's plantproblem.com, no S. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to get that when I applied for the URL, but so it's plantproblem.com. And if you have any questions about the blueprint that I laid out here or additional questions, I can answer them there for you. You can also reach me on my Facebook at Anthony, ANTHONY, BMK. Okay? So reach out to me and give me your feedback, and I will talk about that, or I'll bring it into another episode, or maybe I'll do a second episode on employment for you guys. But I'd like to help everybody out there that thinks that this is for them. So it was great being with you guys today, and I really appreciate my listeners out there, and you guys have a fantastic day. Bye for now.
You've just listened to another insightful episode of Plant Problems. If you like what you heard so far, don't forget to tell your friends and colleagues. For additional resources or to leave a review, head over to plantproblem.com. Join us again next week on Plant Problems with Tony Frischknecht. We look forward to having conversations with you as we go along this journey.